Hindalco has reported fairly decent set of numbers. If you look at the operational performance, surpassed the estimates at least on standalone plus Utkal basis. A 35% downtick there, but better than what the street was estimating. Talking about the financial and a lot more other than the financials of the company is the Managing Director, Mr. Satish Pai. Hello and welcome, sir. I would start off by asking you about the Aleris acquisition first and not the earnings, because that's a bone of contention. It's been delayed by a quarter. We've been seeking concessions with the EU. How confident it is, how confident you are that you'd be able to go through this acquisition process smoothly, you'd be able to deliver on the timeline, and if not, what kind of concessions are you ready to deliver?
So I think that, we have been now working very diligently with the European Union and the US, and we are fairly confident that we will be able to close out the acquisition by Q3 of this year.
I'm sure, but what's the kind of concession that's been discussed, and how much flexible are we with it? Any further details that you can reveal?
No, really, I think at this stage all I can say is that we are in discussions and we are hopeful that we will be able to close it out by Q3.
Because I clearly remember the last time that we spoke, you were confident that it will happen in Q2, and this time around you're confident it will happen in Q3. We know what happened with Tata Steel Thyssen Group. So what are the sort of intricacies in this kind of deal that we can expect?
No, I think that, acquisitions like this sometimes can take time, because when you're dealing with regulatory authorities, you have to give some time to have discussions and go through various options. But all I can say is that we are fairly confident that we'll close it in Q3 of this year.
All right, then I'm going to start off with the business mode. Aluminium division, we've seen a 42% downtick there on the EBITDA level. Wanted to understand what sort of cost pressures are we witnessing for this division, and any sort of reduction that we can expect going forward for the September quarter?
So as you said, the aluminium EBITDA quarter on last year to this quarter was down by 42%, largely because the LME went down by 21%. I think on the cost front, since last quarter, Q4 to Q1, our costs of production of aluminum have come down by 3%. So we are starting to see input costs now start to moderate, because oil prices are down, commodity prices are coming down. So we are quite hopeful that our cost of production going forward in the second half of this year, I should see another 3 to 5% reduction in cost of production.
Fair enough. Okay, I'd also want to understand the extent, are we over the temporary shutdown that we took for the Muri plant, and if at all, would there be any kind of impact that we can expect on account of the shutdown in quarter two?
So what we have declared is that we have largely finished most of the cleanup and the preparatory work, and we have now applied for reopening the plant, which we are hopeful will happen by end of this quarter. So we are really targeting, let's say, September. In the first quarter, our results were impacted by 80 crores. 47 of that was a one-time that we put out in our SEBI filings. I think in the second quarter, it will not be as much, but we should still see about 40 to 50 crores impact, because we will start the plant only towards the end of September. So all the fixed costs of running the plant and the mines will be a burden in the second quarter as well. But it will not be as bad as the Q1.
Sure, and talking a little bit about your copper division, that's also seen a decline, a 24% decline there. Also in your presentation, you suggested that the global slowdown for copper division has been higher than what the street was, or the company was expecting for that matter. With this sort of guidance, what kind of growth can we expect going forward from the division as a whole?
So copper division, I think even last quarter when we did our discussion, I said it was a planned shutdown. So we took a 18 days planned shutdown, because of which the volumes were lower. That planned shutdown actually went off very well. The plant is up and running. So Q2 onwards, you should see the normal copper performance coming back. So which means that, we'll be selling cathodes between 90 to 100 KT. In Q1, we sold only 72 because the volumes were down.
All right. About talking a little bit about the hedging policy, the quantums that were created this time around, and now that the LME aluminium prices are trading below that $1,800 per ton, how comfortable are you around these levels, and would you want to continue creating the same quantum of hedges going forward in the financial year?
No, we will not be hedging at below 1800s for sure. I think that this year, for the remaining 3 quarters, we have about 15.5% hedged, and this is at nearly $2,200. I think that we'll be very opportunistic from this point onwards, because there is quite a lot of volatility in the LME prices. So So suddenly you can see prices spike up. So we have, to be fair, I think that above 1900 we will look at some hedging, but below that we will not hedge.
Okay, and if it's above that 1900 or around that $1,900 per ton, what's the quantum that we can expect?
No, we do what we call core hedges. That means for the forward year, we would like to be going in with at least 20 to 25% hedged. So if we get around 19 now, that means the forward will be about 1950 because you get a contango.
Right.
So if we can get that, we will try to do at least 20%.
All right, and a little broad-based question for that matter. There's been escalating trade war tensions around that we're witnessing. There's been slowing economy. In light of that, what kind of safeguard duties, if at all, the aluminium industry is contemplating or is in discussion with the government that it expects to implement over the course of time?
So we are working very closely with the government on the RCEP negotiations now, because I think that most of the imports that come into India are coming from ASEAN countries, including China. So we would like to make sure that when the RCEP negotiations are done, we have enough of the aluminium and copper lines on the exclusion list or on the very delayed slope list so that the duties don't go down to zero very fast. We are also working with the government that they should put a trigger that if imports from a certain country suddenly shoot up, then there should be a provision to put a safeguard, a provisional safeguard. So I think the RCEP negotiation is the most important one for us that's going on now. Now, equally, we are talking to the government that Indian industry has to become competitive.
Right.
Right. So you can keep asking for more tariffs, but you also have to say, why do we need those tariffs? So can we not make Indian aluminium and copper industry more competitive? Now, to do that, we are saying, the cost of power. Can we reduce the regulatory and taxation burden on power? Because for aluminium, 40% of it is power. So we would like, whether it's starting from coal or from the renewable power obligations, electricity duties, can we get relief on the cost of power? So we also want to work very specifically with the government on how to make Indian industry competitive. Then the need for tariffs will actually go down.
All right, there's been a significant cash burnout for one of your group entity, Idea, and I would like to understand how insulated is the company in terms of these investing policies. How does it plan to, protect the shareholder interest if at all there is a further need of money coming up from Idea as a whole, and the group entity would have to bail out at some point of time, if at all something on those lines is an offering?
So look, we have been very transparent. We own 2.6% of Idea, and when the Idea rights issue came, we told all our investors that we intend to maintain that 2.6. That's why we invested in the rights issue, that 650 crores. But I think we have also been very categorical that we have no plans to invest any more money into any of the group companies.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about your capex requirement in that case, and also debt repayment plans. Because a lot of metal companies, if you know, they've been cutting out their capex requirements by a good 20-25% in order to bring down their debt. What's your plan?
See, the capex and debt for us are two different things. So we are having a very healthy balance sheet. So
Right.
at the end of June, our net debt to EBITDA was 2.69 compared to many other companies
Right.
who don't have that. So I don't have the pressure now to repay debt. What we would like to make sure that is our strategic long-term plans of doing downstream expansion, the Utkal expansion, the cash that we generate, we want to make sure that our long-term does not get compromised. So we will stick with our capex plans as much as possible. But we do not have any plans at this LME level to repay any further debt.
Right. In that case, the last question that I have for you is, what do you think, where do you think LME aluminium prices are headed? What's the bottom level for you? And if it's not, like you always answer that this you think is the bottom and which has been always declining on the declining trend, what's the kind of upside?
So, I rather answer it in a way rather than say where is the bottom or not. Why are commodity prices low? And commodity prices are low because you have the two largest economies in the world involved in a trade war, and it's having an impact on the general economies of those countries. Demand is getting affected. And hence, it's not just aluminium, but most commodities are trading at much lower prices. So I think that, where is the way out is I hope that the US and China will resolve their trade issues. I don't think they need to be friends, but at least they need to resolve, because you need to have world trade activity starting to pick up again. I think that if that happens, and the Indian economy, the demand for aluminium and copper is still quite strong. Aluminium grew at 7, copper grew at 9. So I think that if the sentiment improves and the Indian economy continues on its growth path, then I think we will be hopefully seeing better times.
So you would not want to put a number to where are you seeing LME aluminium prices moving forward?
No, as you said, I think at this stage there's no point in saying this is a bottom or that is a roof.
So you think it's a bottom?
I personally still think that, we are at the lowest levels, because I think the last time we talked, I was saying it's around 1850. And today we are at 1770. But
Correct.
I think you are in that plus minus $50 range, and the rupee has depreciated. But if you actually look at it in rupee terms, our price of aluminium from Q4 to Q1 has barely gone down by 3 to 4%. So I do think we are at that sort of bottom level.
Okay, so what's the kind of upside then you're looking at?
Upside could be, it really depends on how much the demand will go up. But the fundamentals of supply and demand are telling you that there is no additional capacity of aluminium that has come in China. You are seeing that inventories are at all-time lows, which means that if there is any trigger that growth is going to pick up, you can see pretty sharp spikes in the aluminium prices going forward.
So 1900, 1950?
I personally think that if the sentiment improves, it could be even higher than that.
Right, that's quite a bullish outlook that you're painting. But then thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to us.
Thank you. Yeah.